When we think about these legendary fortunes, we tend to see them as these unique stories of pure genius or maybe just dumb luck. But what if that's not the whole story? What if, from the railroad tycoons of the 19th century all the way to today's tech giants, there's a common set of strategies, like an unwritten but shockingly consistent playbook for grabbing wealth and power? Let's dig into that playbook. Okay, so the playbook kicks off with a mindset that's way beyond dedication. It's really an obsession. This quote about a young Jeff Bezos, it gets right to the core of it. Total, absolute commitment. This isn't about work-life balance. It's about creating a world where the mission is the only thing that exists. That, right there, is the price of entry. And let's be real, the end goal is rarely just about the money. This statement from Fox News founder Roger Ailes is just incredibly direct. It tells you everything. The real prize isn't the billions. It's converting all that wealth into raw, world-shaping power. So how do you justify that kind of massive ambition? Well, you frame the mission as a moral imperative, a duty. Here you've got Charles Koch borrowing a line from the ancient scholar Rabbi Hillel. He's framing his political project not as some grab for influence, but as a crusade, a mission to save the country from what he sees as total disaster. All right, so let's dive into play number one, the founder's obsession. And this doesn't start with some grand, perfectly polished business plan. Nope, it starts with a relentless, all-consuming, and honestly pretty unglamorous focus on one single idea. I mean, just look at Sam Walton. Way before Walmart became the beast it is today, his first stores were literally held together with wire. This picture captures the vibe of his 8th store in Arkansas. It was a rented-out bottling plant. Clothes were hanging from pipes, shelves were wired to the walls. It was not about looking good. His one obsession, his only obsession, was to get prices lower than everybody else. End of story. And you can see the sheer power of that focus right here. The journey from a store held together by scraps to a global institution, it's just staggering. But the DNA of that first obsession, unbeatable prices no matter what it takes, that's what scaled from 5 little rooms into a massive empire.
And what's wild is, this kind of obsession almost always shows up way before the business even exists. Look at Jeff Bezos in high school. He didn't just want to do okay, he told people his goal was to be valedictorian. And then he just flat out outworked everyone. A friend of his said the race for everybody else just became a race for second place. That fire to win was burning long before anyone had heard of Amazon.
So once that obsession sets the course, we get to the second play, exploiting the edge. This is all about finding and using every single possible advantage. And this is where the playbook gets a little sharp-edged. It's about pushing right up to the line and sometimes just blowing right past it. And sometimes that edge is, well, shockingly physical. You're looking at an illustration of the railroad titan Cornelius Vanderbilt. And get this, at nearly 70 years old, he was still out there personally street racing his rivals in a horse-drawn wagon. He was risking his life just for the thrill of winning. It's the most literal picture of the drive to dominate you can imagine. But today, the battlefield isn't usually a street race. It's hidden inside the complex machinery of finance. Take the Libor rate. For decades, this was seen as this objective, almost sacred number that controlled trillions of dollars in loans and mortgages all over the world. It was supposed to be untouchable. And here's where we see a playbook inside the playbook. This timeline shows exactly how traders like Tom Hayes took that supposedly objective number and just broke it. He didn't just find an edge, he literally manufactured one. He built a whole network just to rig a global interest rate for his own personal gain. He weaponized the entire system. Okay, so obsession and a ruthless edge get you in the game, but you can't build a lasting empire on your own sweat. That brings us to the third play, and maybe the most important one, building the empire. This is where you turn that chaotic, personal genius into a formula, a replicable system that can be scaled up to infinity. And this quote from McDonald's founder Ray Kroc, man, it just nails it. He wasn't just thinking about selling hamburgers, he was internalizing every single detail of the whole operation. The real estate, the supply chain, everything. He was holding the entire system in his mind before it even really existed. And look at how he turned that mental map into this brutally efficient, repeatable process. You can see he obsessed over everything, from the right airflow for a store in the Midwest to the exact, precise ritual for making French fries. Kroc used his first store like a lab. He wasn't just building one restaurant,
He was building a formula that could be copied perfectly anywhere on Earth.
And listen, this need for a system, it's not just about the product, it's about the money too. John D. Rockefeller, the richest man in modern history, he realized his fortune had just gotten too huge, too chaotic to handle on his own. So what did he do? He hired a former minister, Frederick Gates, to bring systematic order to both his investments and his charities.
Which brings us to the end game. Once the empire is built, once the systems are humming along, the incredible wealth it creates gets converted into a different and way more potent currency, raw power. This is about turning billions into pure influence.
I mean, the classic example of this is the House of Morgan. Like this quote says, for them, banking wasn't just business, it was basically statecraft. The firm was so tangled up with the governments of the US, Britain, and France that its partners were basically financial ambassadors. They completely blurred the line between corporate interests and foreign policy.
Fast forward to today, and that influence, it's way more direct. This number, $115 million, that's just one transfer in 1 year from the Koch network into political groups. Their goal was to wage what they saw as a war against the Obama administration. This is weaponized capital, pure and simple. And that brings us right back to the ultimate ambition. We have to come back to Roger Ailes, because his goal was never a secret. For players at this level, media companies, political networks, they aren't just businesses that happen to have some influence. They are tools, explicitly created for the purpose of wielding power.
But you know, there's always a final chapter in this playbook, and it's often the one the founders don't get to write themselves. It's the final reckoning, that moment when the same forces of obsession and power that built the empire turn back on their creator, and on the rest of us. And in the most disturbing cases, you see how this insulating power doesn't just build things, it enables and protects horrific acts. In Jeffrey Epstein's case, his huge network of powerful people wasn't just a perk of being rich. It became the very machine that let him hide his monstrous crimes for decades. The network protected itself. And sometimes the reckoning happens when that thin, thin line between visionary genius and, well, catastrophic recklessness just evaporates. With Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX, the same chaotic, rule-breaking energy that investors loved on the way up was revealed to be hiding a completely hollow core. Was he a genius or a fraud? In this playbook, the two can look exactly the same for a very, very long time. So think about it. From Vanderbilt literally racing his rivals in the street to the complex algorithmic games of today, the tools change, but the fundamental plays for power, they seem to be timeless. Which leaves us with this final question you see here. If this playbook never really changes, what does that say about our ability to ever truly hold its players accountable?